everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for Square One Small Business Services for our first central bank virtual series that we've got going on since we've gone all virtual in our world. So we've got our Navigating PPP Forgiveness class today with Stephanie Paris, who's been teaching kind of our tax as well as financial organization for your taxes that we've had going on since we realized March of all of our virtual classes online. So she is definitely a pro at going over the different aspects of that. I am Erica Masso. I'm one of the Square One Small Business Services small business specialists. Say that 3 times fast on a Wednesday with no caffeine, and you can do it too. Today, we've got Stephanie teaching our class, as well as Susan from Central Bank, that she'll be talking about kind of what we do working with her, as well as our upcoming programs with her and what we've done in the past. Stephanie, I'm going to throw to you as soon as we have Susan talk about Central Bank. And so, Susan, go ahead and tell us a little bit about our partnership with you and kind of a little bit about where you're working from.
So yeah, hey everybody, good to see you, Erica, and meet Stephanie. And we've been doing these Eat and Educates for 4 or 5 years now, I think. And this is our monthly programming for small businesses, and so excited to be doing the first one as Central Bank. Platte Valley Bank was acquired by Central Bank in April of this year. And I'm still doing what I did before, focusing on our business customers, and really excited to be doing that because now I have over 50 locations in the Kansas City metro area that I can help you do that from. So that's all I'm going to say is just glad to be here. Wish we could really eat, and maybe someday we can really eat together. But good to see everybody, and can't wait to hear more from Stephanie.
Susan, I've got some quality leftovers sitting in my fridge from last night, so that's my Eat and Educate after this call. So, I mean, bear in mind, after we get off this, I get leftover pizza.
Awesome.
There's my highlight. As I mentioned in our introduction, Stephanie's been teaching kind of our tax and tax organization classes for our virtual programming series since March. So we kind of hit the ground running with all of our department programming since we couldn't meet in person. And if you ever want to take a look at any of that series, that is available on our Facebook page under all of our videos. She is a whole playlist of Stephanie's greatest money hits since March that could come in handy depending on what your needs are. If you have tax questions as a childcare business, if you have tax questions when it comes to your PPP loan, largely like today, there's a wide swath of 12 classes, Stephanie?
There's a bunch. We did a whole series on grants too.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a whole mess of them. Yeah, I don't even know. It was like Stephanie Saturday.
It really was. For a while, it was Stephanie Saturday for quite a long time. In case anyone does not know Stephanie is the founder of Guardian Accounting Services. She has, again, teaching our classes, and has recently is a part of a book that's been published. Stephanie, do you want to talk about that briefly?
Absolutely. I co-authored a book with 16 other women, and it's called Yes, I Can, and we made the international best-selling list in the first 24 hours. Yeah. It's all women and just sharing their secrets to their success, or it's a good feel good. It definitely. I think I have like 5 of them on the shelf back here, and I love it. Whenever you're kind of having a crappy day, just jump in. It's good.
There you go. There you go. I'm going to throw this to Stephanie, and so now everybody can see some amazing PowerPoint slides that are everybody's favorite.
They are. Perfect. Well, and I definitely want to thank Susan for all you're doing for small businesses. It's now's the time. It's as good a time as any, and everybody's trying to navigate just life right now, much less the PPP. So thank you for all you're doing over there. It's definitely really powerful. And Square One Small Business Services, always a huge thanks to them. It's always so much fun to get to be a part of things with you guys, and the fact that you're grant funded, and we'll talk about that again in the end, but do fill out the surveys and make sure you continue to share with Square One what you're needing, looking for, if there's if there's something you really want to see a course on, ask them. They put the most amazing stuff together. I've learned how to use Canva because of it. I've learned so much through the classes over there. I definitely encourage all of you to check it out, and definitely check out the Stephanie Saturday Library. It's the good stuff. But it's, they're just doing a lot of great work for Kansas City and across the country. I've met so many cool people through those groups. So thank you for all of that. This is probably more than any of you ever wanted to know or learn or talk about. So let's talk about this PPP forgiveness. I do want to, before I start in on the slides, I want to mention that so many banks are not accepting applications right now. The portal is open with the SBA, but the reason your banks are not, and don't be discouraged, please, but the reason your banks are not accepting applications is it just keeps changing. And from a banking standpoint, do you want to spend those time and resources to process an application, and then next week it could change? There's a bunch of talks right now, before the recess and with the government, but there's been a bunch of talks like, oh, maybe they do a blanket forgiveness. There's all these things changing. So be gracious with your bank. Don't be frustrated with them that they may not accept your application yet. Just have your stuff ready, which is why we're doing this today. We just want to have everything ready, be prepared. So when it does open, when your bank does accept it, then we can go with it. But by no means, it's not on the banks. Please know that they're kind of just the middleman, if you will, through all of this. So they're doing their very best as well. So let's dig in, see what we can figure out. We're going to just go over some quick PPP facts, for the forgiveness piece. The funds have to be used 60% on payroll costs. When we say that, I want to make sure that if you're at 59, that's a problem. So they did adjust it down to 60, but with that 60%, if you do not meet that, none of it's forgivable. So I want to make sure that you're using that at least for 60% on payroll costs. Because they extended the deadline or the time to use it, that should not create a problem for anyone. It should actually be much more doable, but I want to make sure that we do mention that. You can also use the funds and still be eligible for forgiveness on utilities and the mortgage interest payments, only the interest piece. Again, that 60% threshold, if you don't meet it, it's a full repayment. Those repayment terms, depending on when you signed your contract, I don't recall, I wish I could remember the exact date, but depending on when you sign your contract, it could be the 2-year repayment or it could be the 5-year repayment. Either way, the first 6 months in that repayment is going to be deferred. So I want you to think about that. Then you're taking, say you got $100,000 that has to be repaid. If you're in that 2-year term, you're actually repaying that over 18 months, not over 24 months. So just be cognizant of that and that threshold. So we'll talk about the applications themselves. You can find any of the applications on the website. We're going to post the links in the chat here. I am in the comments, but what I want to make sure that you know is that there's 2 different forms. There's the long form and the easy form. The easy form is generally going to be for your contractors, individuals. If you don't have employees, Schedule C filers, you're going to be able to use that easy form. If you didn't reduce your employee count, and if you by more than 25%, if you didn't reduce your salaries by more than 25% or the employee count at all, you can still use that easy form. So basically, if you followed, if it served the purpose like they would like, then, all of that through, then you can use that easy form. It does make a difference. Trust me, the easy form is so much better than the long form. They just read like serial instructions, which is kind of why we're here today, right? So the application, we're going to go make sure that you have the links on the last slide for the application, and then the instructions too. So, we're going to go through pretty high level, but I'm going to share with you what I have come across, the pain points that I've seen as we go through. But I just want to make sure, though, that you do have those links as well in the end. I talk with my hands, so bear with me, you guys. You'll see my hands fly all over. So when you complete the application, you're gonna need your loan documents, your original loan documents. That date, like we said earlier, is going to be super important. But you're going to want the loan number and stuff too. If you don't have it, it is not critical. Your banker, they can help you with that. One of the things I've seen so far is a lot of folks don't have, they have all their paperwork, but there's no loan number listed on it. So don't panic over that. If you don't have that, your banker can help with it, because obviously it's in their system, so they'll have that information. But you do want to make sure that date is going to be super critical. On the application, if you receive that, we call it the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, if you receive that grant on the forefront, that grant was up to $10,000. That was just pushed out based on number of employees. That information is going to be super important. You're going to need to know if you have the grant or if you had the loan. The EIDL grant loan, or the grant funds, they result in an equal amount that has to be repaid for the PPP. If you got $10,000 for, having the more than 10 employees, if you got that $10,000 grant, that $10,000 has to be repaid on the PPP regardless. So that's why it's really important to know if you got the grant or the loan or both, and then how much was that grant. So our applications have to be turned in within 10 months of the covered period. Here's what I want to make sure you guys, for those of you who ever watch me, I do rabbit trail, and I'll give you all these nuggets, so bear with me. But when we say that 10 months, I want to go ahead and put a pin right now and say, I want you to stay in contact with your tax preparer while we talk about this and while you're going through this 10-month period, because so many banks aren't open for it yet. They're not taking it yet. That 10 months may fall into next year when you get to apply. If that falls into next year for that, then that's when you're going to have that tax impact. So I want to make sure that you stay in communication with your tax preparer so you guys can be planning and thinking through that, be forward thinking with that. Some of our banks, I've seen 2 banks that are accepting applications. They're just accepting them to hold them. They're not accepting them to process them yet. But some of the banks are putting together additional documentation requirements. So please stay in contact with your banker. What you don't want to do is hold up this process. You don't want to give them partial information. You want to give that to them with like a big red bow on the packet. The covered period on your application. So we've got your initial part is, your organization information. Then we've got your, the loan, if you had the EIDL, all of that information in that next section. So then the third section, where you're going to ask about that covered period. So for you, the covered period is going to be the time you use the funds. If you were funded May 1st and you used your funds by, let's say June 1st, we're going to use that period in there. Remember, in the beginning, the period was 8 weeks. They did extend it to 24 weeks or December 31st, depending on when you got funded. So everybody's period is going to at least be done by December 31st. So we want to make sure you put that on there. When you have to talk about and when you calculate, if you're using the short form, there's not a lot of calculation. On the long form, there's more. If you are calculating the full-time equivalent, that's 2 part-time employees can equal a full-time. So you want to use that long form, and you're going to fill out that Schedule A. It's a separate schedule for it. So when we're talking about that full-time equivalent calculation, they'll give you the formula and but you'll want to make sure you have your payroll information and kind of their average hours they work, and make sure that you have that. Go through the steps in that Schedule A. It can be a little intimidating when you first look at it, but really, if you follow it to the T and put the data in the right columns, it'll help you calculate that. So then you'll be able to determine your full-time equivalent percentage. If you're doing the long form, you have employees, you did make some adjustments, what have you. Start with that Schedule A worksheet and work backwards. When you open up that loan packet, you're going to get the loan application first, a bunch of like certifications you have to do. Then you'll get the, so there'll be the Schedule A, and then there's a Schedule A worksheet, the very last. Start there. The reason you want to start there is if you gather all your information on the front end, it's going to flow better. But when you start on that Schedule A worksheet, you're going to have your full-time employee calculations. You're going to have anybody who's over the 100K, but you know, that hits that max of the 15,385, because nobody in that period could receive more than 15,385 for it to count towards your PPP. So, you know, you're going to have some steps to go through. Rarely do I tell you to jump to the end and go backwards, but I am telling you that it's going to make things a lot more digestible, but it's building that foundation so you can fill that application out better. On lines 1 through 4, those are the direct numbers. Remember, they're on that schedule, you know, they're just going to be legit. Or I'm sorry, on your application, they're just going to be, I mean, they're hard numbers. There's no, it is what it is. I always recommend that you have a supporting schedule in Excel. If you don't have something worked up where you're like, hey, you know, we had 7 payrolls, here's the gross amount of payroll, here's the employer taxes for this state, you know, here's the health benefits paid by the employer. If you don't have something in Excel like that, holler at us, leave a note, or send a message over to Square One, and we can share with you our PPP tracker. We want to do this for a couple of reasons. One, so you can see a clear trail for it for your purposes while you fill this out. But for 2, you want to give this information to the bank as well with our supporting documentation that we're going to talk about in a bit. When you have everything together and you make it, you know, clear as can be, it's going to be so much better on the banker, but because they're held to another standard too. And the SBA is saying that every application will be reviewed. It may take up to 3 years, but everyone will be reviewed. So that if we have everything right on the front end, that protects you on the back end. You know, a year from now when they're looking at it, they have, here's the Excel, here's pages 1 through 7, you know, you're ready to go. So that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we can provide that support and information all the way through. Lines 5 through 7, they're going to vary depending on the form you're going to use. If you're using that long form, that's that full-time equivalent calculation we talked about, and that's going to take into account, you know, you do get credit for part-time employees. You know, you may only have part-time employees, but maybe you had 14 part-time employees, and so when this started, your equivalent was 7. So they just want to make sure you still are in that range. So like I said, you do get credit for part-time people. On the easy form, which we're seeing is the majority of people are going to be filling out that easy form. It'll be lines 5 through 7. They're going to talk about that calculation for the forgiveness piece. And so on the long form, it's going to be lines 8 through 10. I want to share, be sure when you go through that, I want you to do exactly what it says for dividing the payroll cost by 0.60. And I'm going to share with you why. As I'm going through it, the very first one I did, I'm like, what the heck? No, 60% of, because I knew you had to use 60%. So I'm like, 60% of the payroll, you're messing up my calculation. And it just wasn't, I was multiplying it, not dividing it, because I knew that 60%, right? So I went through, bless their hearts, the SBA was so kind. I went through 2 people on their support line and then got to a manager, and he was like, no, you're right. And then we came to the conclusion, oh, no, I need to read the directions. So all that to say, we're all human, but divide that by 0.60, because what that does is it gives you like the max amount of what payroll would have had to be. So it's going to be, that number is going to be much larger than your payroll costs number. Do not panic. That's a good thing. So again, I'll always share my bumps along the way with all of you. So we're going to talk about the supporting documentation for this application. If you use a payroll service, most of them have reports they've put together for the PPP. The really important part is going to be that you use the period. When you pull those reports, use the period that those funds are covered. So whatever your covered period that we talked about in the beginning, that's the date you want in your payroll service reports. Most of the payroll service reports, they all have their own version, but it's all the same information. They're breaking it down by employee. They're giving you the state and any local employer paid tax. If you have benefits, they're calculating out the health, the 401k, they're showing all of that together for you, so that you can show that for part of our supporting docs. The other thing, I'm going to rabbit trail on you again. When we talk about the health insurance, when we talk about the 401k, that is only the portion you as the employer paid. You do not record the amount that the employee paid. It doesn't count towards this. So make very sure that you don't add the employee portion. We have seen that a couple of times already. And so we send that back to people like, listen, that's not really your money, so we're not going to use that. When you pull your payroll reports, you also want to pull your 941s. That's your quarterly report that gets filed with the IRS. We want to make sure that we have that to support so you have your payroll reports and your 941s. Then if you have your state unemployment insurance, some people call it SUTA, you'll want to make sure that you have that report as well. I know that, a lot of this covered period splits in 2 different quarters for payroll. It's okay. Pull both of them. That way you want to give them all the information that they need. You want to cut down on any back and forth, because let's face it, the people reviewing that, they're human too. And nothing benefits you whenever they have to go back and forth and people get frustrated. So the more we give them on the front end and have all of our ducks in a row, the better off we're going to be. Utility statements. You're going to want to pull any of those utility statements together, but you're also going to want to pull any canceled checks showing they were paid. If maybe you pay by ACH, pull that bank statement. You want to give them all the information, the proof that, yes, we got the bill, but we used those funds properly. We paid the bill. That's going to be really important as well, that we can show all the way across the board that we served our fiduciary responsibility and used those funds like we're saying we did. Like I said, we're going to gather those bank statements and canceled checks. I totally forgot that I had the slide in there. Sorry. But that's helpful. That'll be helpful for the payroll tax. That'll be helpful for payroll, all of it. But make sure you're grabbing those bank statements and or any canceled checks. Most bank statements anymore have those checks at the end. So if you are one who writes the checks, and just make a copy of your statement and highlight those on the end so that you can point them to them. Like I said, make it as easy as possible. Don't make them have to dig for it. So on your mortgage, it's the interest statement. The interest part is what we can use the funds for. So if you get an actual statement, it should break out principal and interest. So you'll, again, want to make sure that you're circling, highlighting whatever the interest portion. Maybe you're on e-statements, so you don't get it. Maybe, whatever. Maybe you're on auto draft, so you just don't get any kind of statement. And that's okay. Pull that information from the bank. I don't know a single bank website that you can't get into your loan portal on it and see the transactions for principal and interest. I just don't know of one anywhere. So know that you can use that billing statement as long as the interest is broken out. Otherwise, go ahead and log into your online banking, go to that. If for some reason you can't, ask your bank. It's not a new request. They're going to be getting it more and more, but reach out to your banker and ask them. They can help you with that. Is that interest piece is going to be what's really, really important for this forgiveness. Remember that Excel sheet we talked about earlier? So we're going to go back to that. You want to make sure that you have, again, that recap. I take it one step further. I, of course, have my Excel sheet, and here's the funds. Here's what we used to, have it broken out by day. I have it tied back. We recommended everybody have their funds separate from their operating funds, so you could see those funds being released as they're used up. If you did that, if you did have your funds separate, make sure that your Excel sheet's tying to that on June 1st, we transferred $7,000, and you can see what makes up that $7,000 across the board. When you prepare your packet, I go so far as to label like my bank statement with an A, and then I'll put on my Excel sheet A, behind that line. And I do that, you can drop it in with Adobe, right? You can just throw it on there. But if you're printing it out, write it on there. But I do that. So again, so they can go directly to it. It's not just courtesy, but, and being the right thing to do, but it also, the bankers are going to be inundated. Let's be honest. We saw the funds get used up in just a couple of days. So we want to make sure that we give them, again, all the information so they're not having to go back and forth with us a bunch. Because when they give that packet over to the SBA, then it's a complete packet ready to go as well. So I made sure that we have those links for the instructions and the forms themselves on here. I wanted to make sure that you guys had everything to go to. I think that's the last one. The instructions, like I said, they're not the worst thing in the world. Those are not too bad. But most of it, and they have designed it pretty well to be pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of knowing where to locate things. But on that long form, do start with the back first. That's the best advice I can give on that one, is start at the back and then work your way forward, because it's going to help you with that calculation. On that note, one of the things, thank you for sharing that. One of the things I want to make sure we talk about on that note is, if you did lay off people, you now have until the end of the year to get back to that number. So if you're ready to fill in, you're ready to apply for forgiveness today, but maybe you're 2 people short. Maybe you're down 2 people, but you expect to be back up by the end of the year. Hold off. Use that 10 months to your advantage. Get your numbers back up before you apply for that. Again, you want to position yourself to where you have the best chance for that full forgiveness. What we're seeing is most people did use it for payroll, especially since they extended that from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. Most people used it all for payroll. So, if that's the case, make sure that you have that. Make sure that you keep those numbers. If there's a caveat to that, if somebody, you brought everybody back and you had somebody who said, I don't want to come back, have that in writing, because that still means that you try to bring everyone back, and that helps in your forgiveness packet as well. That's one of the things we've seen quite a bit, because, we've done a lot of teaching on this and just, helping people. And one of the things we see is people are like, well, I don't want to come back. Okay, great. Put it in writing, because then that protects you, because that does show that you did restore, but you did make every attempt to restore back to those and keep those jobs. that you should not be penalized for someone not wanting to come back. And then obviously if you can replace them, great. But maybe you were bringing them back just to do the right thing. We want to make sure that you get that benefit in that space as well. The other thing, one of the things we do is even with the payroll reports that they have, I keep a separate sheet for the Excel. Maybe I do like Excel, whatever, but I do keep a separate Excel sheet for it, because if anybody is going to hit that max, so maybe everybody on your staff makes $50,000+ a year, and so you are able to spread that out. You want to make sure nobody can have more than that $15,385 in that covered period. So if you have 20 employees and maybe they hit that, maybe they're at 20,000 based on the report, they have to cap at the 15,385. So you want to make sure that you can show who is capped and who's not. That's kind of been a little bit of a sticky wicket for some people, because maybe the owner makes $100,000. Maybe so maybe they do make the $100,000 and you're using your funds over an 18-week period. Well, they're going to obviously be more than $15,385 for that period. So they did put that, okay, we can't exceed this based on the original 2.5 months. So just remember that 15,385 is where you're going to stop it. So if for some reason, I don't know if I've not seen anybody who's had trouble meeting that threshold for payroll anywhere. So if you're struggling, if you feel like, man, I don't think we're going to make it, reach out through the Square One Small Business Services, reach out to your tax preparer, somebody, let's look at your numbers, because I'm guessing something's off. They were really good about that calculation and making sure they shared it out. So we want to make sure that we can answer that question or resolve that for you. Like I said, I haven't seen anybody run into that problem yet, but I do want to make sure that, if you do, that we're there for you with that. And does anybody have any questions yet? Great question. What if you're a sole proprietor? Love it. So here's the thing. As a sole proprietor, anything in the black is your income, right? So if you got $10,000 for the PPP, you just need to show that you use that $10,000. And so, maybe it's a check from the business to yourself. You can totally do that. There's a lot more lenient with that sole proprietor space, which is partly why they're trying to get like that blanket forgiveness that they're talking about, because that does cover so many people. Maybe you're a realtor and so you got $10,000. Well, how do they know? How are you going to substantiate that, right? Well, it's a matter of showing that you took those funds personally. Does that make sense? Sorry, guys, it's allergy season terribly. Jim had mentioned that, he thought that we were wrong. Actually, the law shows they did revise it. I believe it was in June, but no, that 60%. When they revised it, originally it was 75%, and so then it would taper off. But when they cut that threshold down to 60, they said it's all or nothing. Absolutely. And then, yes, you divide that payroll by 0.6. You're absolutely right. So if you did that 100,000 and you had 50%, you had 50,000 in payroll, they're saying that the minimum amount you could do would be the 80, for payroll is the 83. It's a very convoluted calculation, but it's their calculation nonetheless. Renee, what if you gave yourself a raise at that time? Is that okay? As a sole proprietor, or like a raise during the time? Like, did you bonus yourself? Did you do it so that you can make sure you use the funds up? Those would be the questions I would ask, and that's kind of some gray area yet. It would depend on, if you have other employees. Were you the only one that got the raise? There's if you want to elaborate a little bit, I'm happy to touch on that. We'll just keep going. Renee, if you have to step away or whatever, do holler at us. We'll see what we can do to talk through that. But generally, one of the things we had when it was in the 8-week period, I'll give you a for instance. And when it was still just 8 weeks, and we had a couple folks like, oh goodness, we may not be able to use that up. We were telling them, okay, well, can you do a mid-year bonus? Can you take the Christmas bonus and split it, because people need the money now, for one, but for two, then we would absorb that amount. But then, like I said, it got extended. So I generally would say you're probably in a good place, Renee. Owner and his wife, other employees didn't get the raise. That may be a sticky one. That would be that one I can't speak to. That would be up to the SBA, to be honest, because that could be sticky. If your payroll reports show it and you're not hitting that, you didn't exceed the 15,385, then you may still be just fine. If you've documented employees not returning, can you still use the easy form? Do you just include them in the calculations? Jim, I would still use the easy form, because you're still in that number piece, as far as you didn't decrease your staff. They chose to, you have that documentation. I think I would use the easy form, because you're really not having to calculate the full-time equivalent, if you don't have like 13 part-timers and what have you, I would still start there. I definitely think that. You guys have really great questions. Keep them coming. That's my favorite part, is the questions. Renee, if you want to, we can look at your payroll reports and see kind of if anything stands out crazy that may create a problem. Definitely reach out to Square One, and you and I can sync up and take a look at it if you'd like. I'm happy to do that. While we're waiting for more questions, you guys, again, I do want to remind you that there is a survey. So as you go through this, we want to make sure that you fill out the survey. This is how they continue to provide these great opportunities for people, for small businesses across everywhere. Even I have people from Atlanta sometimes that jump in, or Louisiana, sometimes from Hawaii. So make sure you're filling out that survey, because that's how they can report back to the funder who has made all this possible. So sometimes people get sidetracked and forget, but it is really important that you do that for them. We still have plenty of time left, guys. Lay it on me. I'm going to open up while you guys are waiting. I'm going to open up another window, and we'll see. Maybe I can get those links opened, and we'll see what else we can come up with that may pose questions for all of you. You said this is from Hush Blackwell on August 6th. Additionally, in order to be eligible for full forgiveness, a borrower must use at least 60% of the PPP loan and no more than 40% maybe non-payroll costs. That is true. If a borrower uses less than 60% of its PPP for payroll costs, it will not receive the full amount of loan forgiveness. I think your comment ended. I mean, Jim, and Hush Blackwell may know more than we know, but and that may be they may be interpreting it differently. I mean, obviously they're attorneys as well. And you're right, everything does change. You're 1,000% correct. It's changing on the weekly, it seems, but it's, as like I said, I partner a lot with Citron Cooperman, which is a CPA firm, a very large CPA firm as well. And we do, everything we're seeing says that under 60% is no forgiveness. And that, like I said, that was written in that amended law. And I've not seen anything passed since then. I think, extending it to 24 weeks, if somebody can't hit that 60%, that we may have bigger things to be concerned about, because truthfully, if they can't hit it, then how did they become eligible? There's other factors in that piece that I would really want to be looking into as well, to be honest. And actually, while we're talking about it, I'm going to pull up over here on our Citron stuff and see. Because I want to make sure that we have the latest and greatest. Because, that it was June 5th when that was signed. It's the Flexibility Act, I believe is what they're calling it. Yeah, I definitely, I'm 100% with you, Jim, on that they should be able to meet the 60% in 24 weeks. Truthfully, so, by the act, it's saying that under the 60%, but, if somebody's going to be close, I say let's go to the SBA, let's talk to them, see what we can come up with, and make sure that, they're going to be our best resource. Again, I'm going to say be gracious with them and be kind. They're inundated and buried as well. But I definitely, and Jim's right, you guys, so much gets brought out and changed all the time. It's moving every day, something changes, right? So I want to make sure that, we are trying to give you the latest and greatest information. And unfortunately, it does seem to change SBA updates every Wednesday. So, for what that's worth, right? But we do want to make sure that, we get you as much information as we can and get it in your hands. And that's this conversation that Jim and I are having right here is largely why banks are like, whoa, you can fill out an app, but we don't want to do anything yet. Right here, and Forbes just reported to you, Jim, that they're trying to get clarity on it as well. So, there's that, right? It's just clear as mud. So we do, you guys just be gracious with them when you reach out to them for assistance or for your questions. That's a big one. That's a really big one. Again, remember that the EIDL, that grant changes too. There will be some repayment if you receive that grant. And you'll be able to know if it's a grant or not based on the paperwork. So I had somebody the other day that wasn't sure if they got the grant or not. So, if it was the loan or the grant, and we pulled out their paperwork and it was the loan. So make sure, don't be afraid to ask the questions and jump in it. That's going to be really big. Your banks, they may defer you to somebody else to ask questions to. But what we're finding is generally there's one, maybe two people in the bank that really, have kind of become an expert, if you will, in this. Best they can until it changes the next day, right? And let's see, I'm on the SBA website too, Jim. I want to see if anything's updated there. It looks like nothing's updated since June 30. Ugh. Well, there you have that on that one. Does anybody have any other questions? I can talk to a fence post all day, you guys. So you can keep asking, keep it coming. I think what we're going to find, what we're finding from my firm and the firms that I'm working with, we are finding that the majority of people are rolling under the easy form. So I think you're going to keep seeing that. I think that's going to be the bigger one. They did update August 11th, Jim. So I'm scrolling to see. Again, if anybody's having trouble with that 60%, we should talk about that. If you don't think we can get it, we're going to hit it. We want to make sure we do that. Oh, Renee, this is a good question. After you run out of the PPP funds, do you still have to keep them full time, or can you reduce the hours to 30 hours or even lower? And so they can be part of that shared work program, which I've seen a lot about lately. That's really getting a lot of good traction. Or get partial payment for reduced hours from workman's comp. So that's a really good question. And here's what I'm going to say on that one. I 1,000% would say to call the SBA, or and they've been so prompt. Like, I don't know how they're keeping up, but they're doing a great job. I would call the SBA on that one, or maybe consult your attorney, if you've got an attorney who's specializing in that, because I just want to make sure that's kind of uncharted waters. So I would definitely, I just go to the horse's mouth. I've never sat on hold more than 10 minutes with the SBA, but I would call them directly. If the person, whoever answers, if they can't help you, they're going to find you somebody who can. But that's exactly what I would do, just to make sure you're covered. I would get protected. Jim, good question. Just so you're clear, if I got the EIDL $10,000 as a grant, is it rolled into the PPP loan and can be forgiven? So with the SBA, you can't have both, and both of them it can't be the grant funds, which are forgiven. You don't have to pay back, and the full PPP. So if you got the $10,000, then $10,000 of the PPP will have to be repaid. Does that make sense? Because they'll spread that. They'll spread that over the term, but $10,000 will have to be repaid. They're not letting you double dip. You guys have really good questions. Renee, do you have the contact information for the SBA? I can grab it for you if not. Do you write actual employees at the time of the loan are actual employees or a full-time equivalent? If they're part-time, do that worksheet for Schedule A so you can see what your full-time equivalent is. And then, so you'll need that at the time of the loan. What did you report on the loan application? And then you'll do the same for the loan forgiveness. When your period is up, you'll want to make sure that you have that ready. I'm gonna, let's see. You can use a text for if you're gonna call in to the SBA, you're gonna call 800-877-8339. And that'll get you into them. That's really, they're like I said, they're super helpful. Interesting, Jim. I haven't heard that. So now, I'm going to dig this up. I am. You said, that if you have to appeal, it's a legal process. So you can't be represented by an accountant, only yourself or an attorney. That, wow. Wow. I'm not even sure. I haven't seen a ton on the appeal process yet because, they don't even know the front end yet, right? They're still trying to figure that out. So that's really interesting. I tell you what, I'm going to make a sticky. What I will do is I'm going to check into that. I'm going to check with some people that I know and just see what I can find out and share that out with this group. I'll put it in the comments. But I'll find out what I can today, if anything. But that's really interesting. Seems to me like you would want your CPA there, but I don't know. I guess if you have a tax attorney, that would be fine, but that's a huge cost for a small business. Okay, Jim Cosgrove. Hello. You got 38,000 from the EIDL, 10,000 from the PPP. Is the PPP deducted from the EIDL, and what portion is forgivable? On that 38,000, my question to you is any of that a grant? Were you granted any of the funds, or did it come in one $38,000 lump sum? If you got that grant based on the number of employees on the front end, then that part won't be forgivable. Otherwise, if you got, say, we were talking earlier about the $10,000 grant from the EIDL. If $10,000 of that 38,000 was the grant, then that's what you're going to have to repay. So then your PPP would fully be repaid. If not, then it wouldn't be. Based on it being a 38,000 from the EIDL and only 10 from the PPP, I suspect you probably didn't get a full $10,000 in the grant either. So I'd be curious. Feel free, pop that in there and let me know. We can talk through it. I would definitely be curious. One lump sum, PP was separate, and you're the only employee. Oh, perfect. That's why you didn't get it. That's why it's not a grant. So they're completely separate. So your PPP, that 10,000, can be forgivable, and then you have just the 38,000 for the EIDL, which is probably 3.75% interest over 30 years. So that's probably a really nice repayment plan. On your S corp, I'm assuming you've already talked to your tax preparer and made sure that you're running it as payroll, right? Just tidbit. Because as an S corp, you should be taking a reasonable wage. So if not, do call your tax preparer, your accountant, and talk to them about that. And make sure you stay protected. I told you guys I rabbit trail. I can't help it. Come up with some crazy stuff. Perfect. That's exactly what I want to hear, Jim. Thank you. That's the thing. We see that a lot in what we do. And people are like, no, I'm an S corp. Like, yeah, but you need a paycheck. IRS is going to ask, how do you feed yourself? So that's excellent. Yeah, then you should be good. And the great part, Jim, is that you'll have your payroll reports to show it. So yours will be pretty clean. But yes, that PPP is forgivable. Again, especially since you're just joining us, Jim, what I do want to make sure I share, and I shared earlier, is that they say that PPP money is tax exempt. However, you can't use those expenses you can't deduct those expenses that you paid with the PPP money. So if you got $10,000, we're going to use you as an example, Jim. If you had $10,000 of PPP money forgiven, that means you don't get to use $10,000 of your payroll expense. So that ending impact is your net income is going to be up by 10,000. So keep that in mind. Keep communication with your tax person so they know, hey, let's plan, because some people, I have a client that got over $250,000. That's going to be a heck of an impact at the end of the year when, now we have $250,000 additional in our net income. You want to make sure you brace for that and not have like a big slap in the face from the tax guy. I'm not really good at surprises, which is largely why I continue to say this. I just don't want anybody to be surprised by it. It's really great questions. Do you guys have any other questions? Keep going. I don't even remember if it's till 1 or 1:30, you guys. I'm just going to keep talking as long as you'll talk to me. Okay, I wasn't going to say it out loud, Jim, but you're right. There's a lot of Jims in here. You're absolutely right. Like, that's funny. We have 3, Jim Rooney, Jim Cosgrove, and Jim S, because I don't want to butcher your last name. So yeah, there's a few Jims. Renee, did my answer make sense on the recording of the employees? If not, just seriously reach out. We can pair up and we can walk through it. I do encourage you guys again to, if you have questions that are very specific, kind of like we were talking about earlier on, like with Renee's question, do call them. Don't do the email thing. Email is probably okay when it's not COVID, but it's not going to work right now. Jim Rooney, good question. So the Treasury Secretary was pushing to make the PPP not taxable. So the PPP funds themselves are not taxable. However, because of that, you can't use the expenses that you paid with it. So they're saying, we're not going to tax you on the money coming in, but you can't use, so that whatever you paid with it, you can't use that expense to benefit your company, your business. So at the end of the day, the net impact, is that you weren't able to use those, say, $10,000 in expenses. So at the end of the day, your net income is going to show $10,000 more. I wish they would have gone about it a little differently in the verbiage, because it's pretty messy. It's not super clear when they should just say, hey, there will be a tax impact. Yes, we can help you, but there's going to be a tax impact. So, Renee, good. Thank you. I don't know any other way around it for the tax piece, but we'll definitely keep an eye on it. Like I said, I know there was a whole list of things they were trying to get through before everything went on recess for a month. So Renee, you can actually you can get a hold of me through Square One Small Business Services. Sorry. You can get a hold of me through there. And it actually, if you do it through there too, it kind of helps their track for their grant funding too. But they'll put us together and we can go through it. They're really good about that. There's so many great resources here, you guys. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love this organization. And now Susan and I are going to have to sync up for all the cool stuff she's doing for small businesses. I'm really excited. Super stoked about that. Jim Rooney, sorry, I got to stop just saying Jim. Jim Rooney, did that answer your question? I need to come up with like a cool infographic for that or something, because it's just so messy. It's not really crystal clear by any means. Oh, Robert, thank you. No, it's so cool to get to be a part of this with these ladies. And these groups are amazing. They really are doing so many great things. And, if you follow me anywhere, I'm always like, Kansas City is the best for small business owners. It's so entrepreneurial. I love it. And I mean it, and I mean it wholeheartedly. So it's really an honor to get to hang with these ladies and do this stuff and just kind of help people, It's like Jim S. and I were talking about earlier, stuff literally is changing every day. So it's hard to keep up with it. It can be a challenge. Ooh, if they can let us deduct the payroll, I am down. I'm loving that idea. I think that would be really big for the small businesses everywhere. So if they can pass that, we're going to have a big party, a big watch party or something. Renee, what if we hired someone temporarily during the time? Should I include his salary? Yes, girl, take that credit. Yes, yes, yes. You want to add them. Because what you did with that is exactly what those funds are for, keeping people employed and keeping businesses open. So that's exactly right. I don't know about you guys, but I know I'm like in the morning when I get up, the first thing I do is check my email to see what came down with this. I'm like, okay, how's this going to impact my world today? And you can always tell when something new has been released with it, because it seems like you get like 37 emails and people have, they're like, it's scary. People are like, how's this going to impact us? Because some of that repayment terms, if you were before the June 5th, that's a lot. Just spreading it over 18 payments. If you had $250,000 in PPP funds over 18 payments, what is that, 15K a month roughly? That's a lot for people who are already struggling, because of the COVID. So that's why we do this. We just want to keep sharing it and try to position everybody for the forgiveness if we can. I'm not good at sitting quietly, you guys, so give me some questions. Does anybody have anything else?
Fingers crossed. That may be it. We'll
Right
see.
on.
I'm coming up right now. I think you
You're
answered my questions. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
My pleasure.
I mean, you're the amount of knowledge that has to keep changing and pivoting for everything is I'm sure just exhausting. Oh, hang on. Okay, Jim just saying Jim Cosgrove for clarity.
I know we had like the party of Jims. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you.
Susan, thank you so much for us doing this today and being part with us for all the PPP fun, for lack of a better term, today.
Right.
This is top of mind, and we get a lot of questions about this. And I just want to say hi to Mr. Stinky Feet. My kids loved you. That's the Jim Cosgrove, Jim, and good to see you.
There you go. It goes full circle. Thank you everyone for attending. Please use the link below at the top of the comments to fill out our survey so that we know how we're doing and what we can do better and what else you might like to learn about from all of us at Square One and Central Bank. Thank you for attending today, guys, and thank you. We'll see you all real soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.